gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do?
Welcome to another training video. I'm Petty Officer Romero with Job Corps. For those of you who've been watching the videos online and would like to get involved in Job Corps, get on the internet, look up Job Corps. It gives opportunities for young people. You can get your high school diploma. You can get a trade. It can be anywhere. Obviously, my field is security, law enforcement, and military. But there's also construction and plumbing and site maintenance, and there's all kinds of things for people, and it's a great opportunity for you guys to learn a career, finish your high school diploma if you haven't, and it's at no cost to you. So I would highly recommend it. The staff, very caring, who want to see you guys succeed and develop a career and a life for you and your family. So look into it. And today's video, we're going to get right to it. It's going to be traffic control. Now, this might seem like a very simple skill, but if you've ever paid attention, it can actually be pretty complicated. Now, you're going to want to make sure that you understand what it is that your purpose is out there. There's organization to it. If you have to have people turning, you have lines of cars. Some cars are going 30 miles an hour. You want to make sure you're not turning into traffic. So this is not going to be a step-by-step guide. It's more of a general overview of traffic control, intersections, what really is your responsibility. But the first and foremost, you're there to regulate the flow of traffic, and to organize, to make sure that you're allowing people to move as freely and keep things as clear and clean as possible. You don't want to. I'm gonna tell a story. I was in the military. I was overseas, and I was in Italy, and this was maybe an example of the worst traffic control I've ever seen in my life. So there were two naval air stations, NAS 1, NAS 2, in Sigonella, Italy, which is on the island of Sicily. And when there was a railroad track in between the two, so anytime you went from one to the other, you had to cross the railroad track. Well, the gates would come down, and a train would be coming, and you would have a line of cars. And for whatever reason, once that line got backed up, 6, 8, 10, 12 cars, the next car in line decided that they're going to pull up next to the front car so that they can maybe be front of the line. I have no idea what their logic was. And the train might take 10, 15, 20 minutes to pass. And by the time that the end of the train came and the gate lifted, you can only imagine that you had tons of cars backed up this way, more cars backed. So it was 2, sometimes 3 rows of cars side by side, 10, 12, 15 cars deep. And when that, whatever that, the warning pole that comes up and down that prevents you from crossing tracks into the train would go up and the train would pass. Well, the same thing happened on the other side. And you would just have simply a backed up, congested, it was a parking lot, and it was just the most ridiculous thing. I can imagine that maybe you were selfish enough that it happened one time. I just could never understand why this happened, and it got to the point where if those train tracks went down and you weren't one of the first 2 or 3 cars, then I would just turn around and go back to the base that I came from, because you were talking about a 45-minute fiasco of cars trying to get past. Because maybe you should never underestimate, the moral of the story, never underestimate the, I don't want to be too insulting, but the ignorance of the driver. So without someone there to control it, it can get pretty out of control pretty quickly. So you want to regulate the flow. You want to control and assist turns. So unlike a red light, the more times that you stop traffic, obviously it backs it up and slows it down. So you want to make sure. Then another thing too is, let's say if you have a traffic light, that light could say left-hand turn, but there's nobody ready to turn. So the automated traffic light does not know what's most efficient. A human being there can see there's no need to turn left or let's say there's two cars and they've been waiting for 10 minutes, you can let them turn and get traffic going right away again. So it's best to understand, what's best for the entirety of the traffic, meaning that, if there's two cars sitting there waiting, they might have to wait a little bit longer while the majority of the traffic moves through. And then whenever that traffic slows down, then you can let the two cars turn. Or you see something backing up, you have to use your best common sense. Another thing is you want to protect pedestrians. Obviously, roads are made for cars, but in most states, the pedestrian has the right of way anywhere. So a car is always has to be knowledgeable of the pedestrians on the street. So you want to also be aware of that and protect the pedestrians as much as possible. Another thing is assisting people who are looking for information. Now, look, there are times when you can't just stop what you're doing to talk to the people and explain things, but keep in mind your job there is also to help people out in these rough situations. So go ahead, get involved with the pedestrians when possible. Also with coordinate the traffic, coordinating and informing the people who may, let's say it's a concert, they may not know, hey, where's gate C at? So these are things that you're going to have to be aware of when you go into it, so you can have a general idea of, you're not just directing traffic and stop and go. It's like, hey, everybody going in this direction is for this purpose, and everybody in this is for a different purpose. Also, let's emergency vehicles. You want to make sure that you're not doing the thing that I talked about when I was in Italy and having 2 or 3 rows of traffic with no way for emergency vehicles to get through. You always have to be aware of that. So whenever there's an emergency vehicle, they can get through and get to helping whichever emergency situation is going on at the time. All right, let's talk a little bit about the equipment. One thing you may not have thought about, and this might be a little bit important, is your attire. If you are in Texas in the middle of the summer, you want to make sure that you're dressed appropriately, because you're going to be out there for a long time. And maybe a better idea is somewhere in the winter. You could go outside and have a light jacket on and be fine as long as you're going from the house to the car to the building. But if you're going to be out in 30-degree weather for a long duration of time, you're going to want to make sure that you are dressed appropriately, because it is a situation where you don't really have relief coming. You can't just run in and get changed. So you're going to want to make sure that you're dressed appropriately for the weather. Bundle up, warm, and everything. Now, the next thing is reflective clothing. We talk about safety all the time. You want to go home the same way that you went to work, okay? And reflective clothing keep you from getting run over by a car. So make sure, and I can't emphasize this enough. You would be surprised, if you're not already, that people nowadays, it's not accidents happen because people are spending too much time texting while they're driving. And sometimes you just have to be just like a defensive driver. You have to make sure that you're always, never assume that person sees you or is aware that you're there. You always have to be careful. All right. So let's talk about another thing, flashlights. You'd be surprised how a simple flashlight like this can help you control a situation when you're talking about parking or traffic control or anything. It's amazing that between a flashlight and a radio, that people just somehow connect that to positions of authority mentally. So I haven't seen any surveys or studies done on it, but I'll tell you a story. When I was younger, I did security for a bar on Bourbon Street. And I'm telling you, you can have a shirt that says "Eat it Joe's," meaning it doesn't say security or police. And if you have a radio in a hand and a flashlight in the other hand, people will do whatever you tell them to do. Generally speaking, I'm not saying you'll be able to break up a brawl on the street with that, but the point is that if you're just like, look, I need everybody to step across the street here, and you have that flashlight in hand, please, can I get everyone to cross the street over here? Let's get everyone over here. The people will do it. And it's funny how the flashlight, just people relate it to authority. So the same thing with the radio. Not just in people viewing you as a person in a position of authority, but also for communication purposes. In every facet of life, communication is extremely important. In security, extremely important, especially if you're out there directing traffic and you want to maybe, let's say, let somebody know that there's an emergency vehicle coming through so that they can prepare, get their traffic organized in a way that emergency vehicle can get through really quickly. So again, communication is important. Flashlight will help you in a lot of situations. So let's keep that in mind. Another thing is a whistle. Believe it or not, I mean, I say believe it or not like somebody wouldn't believe that once you stop traffic, man, the first thing people are doing, their heads down and they're texting. They're reading the internet. They're reading their emails. They're not paying attention. So having a listen will give a little burst, let them know, oh, it's my turn to go. It will keep things moving quickly, because if you're sitting there yelling at somebody or waving your hand and they have the radio playing, they're not going to know you there. So having a whistle on you will be imperative. So make sure that you have that. So anyway, is your general overview of traffic control and the equipment that you need. If there's any questions or you want to discuss some stuff, I'm always available. I always talk about Facebook, email. You can get in touch with me on Blackboard, which I'm usually on Monday through Friday in the afternoon, 12:30 to 2-ish or so. Come in there and let's talk about whatever it is that you want to discuss. So if you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to, and or leave your feedback. Always keeping it interesting. So for Job Corps, this is Petty Officer Romero. We'll talk to you on the next video.
Tell me what you gonna do, what you gonna do.